Good morning, and thank you for joining us for our final 50th anniversary TMCC professional development, looking at the last 20 years of TMCC. We are here to talk about the modern era, 2001-ish to the present. I have a very distinguished panel that I am excited to have and share the stories that they are going to bring forward for us. Just some other housekeeping items. I want to thank the 50th anniversary committee that's been working all year long for this panel and all of our other 50th anniversary stuff, our marketing and communications team that has really worked tirelessly to make this all happen. And of course, the folks who actually planned these three panels this year, Pat Slavin, Tim Ill, and Cameron Carr. We've worked really hard to try and present some of our historical stories, so a shout out to them as well. I would like to ask our distinguished panelists to please introduce yourself and tell us when you joined the TMCC team and in which roles, and if I could ask you to do that starting right here and going that direction, please.
I am Ron Marston. I've been working at TMCC since 1994 as a part-time instructor. I started working full-time in 1998. Currently serving as the Department Chair of Visual and Performing Arts and faculty in the Graphic Arts and Media Technology program.
I'm Elena Bubnova, and I started at TMCC in 1999 as the coordinator of outcomes assessment, and I came to TMCC from the system office, and currently I serve in the role of Associate Vice President for Research, Marketing, Web Services, and Technology.
And I'm Dr. Maria Christina Sheehan, and I joined the college in 2008 and left at the very end of 2015. This was my third presidency. I had served 2 years, two prior institutions in California before coming to TMCC, retired, and was with a program called Achieving the Dream, which was about taking students who have developmental issues and bringing them up to college level proficiency. And after a year of being a consultant, I was tempted by this presidency at TMCC, and the president of American Association of Community Colleges said, you should look into this. I did, got off the plane, came to the campus, and fell in love. And I left in very end of 2015, so I'll talk about that era.
Excellent. Hi, I'm Julie Ellsworth. I came to TMCC as a biology tenure track faculty in 2002 and was in the biology department for 15 years, served as chair, and then I have been dean over life sciences, allied health, and public safety for about the last 5 years.
I told you we had a very distinguished panel. Thank you all for being here, and I really, really appreciate it, and I can't wait to hear the stories. So let me set the stage first just a little bit. In the year 2000, we had a brand new website that had been launched recently, right before that. Our head count that year was 10,214 students, with full-time enrollment being 4,654. The previous year, in 1999, our IGT Applied Technology Center had just opened, and our first fully online courses were offered in spring 2000. As we continued to grow and we presented some even more educational opportunities in the Reno-Sparks and surrounding areas, there was something brand new called the Learning Experience Assessment Program, LEAP. So that's where we were at the beginning of our 2 decade ago time. So let's just dive right in. Over the last 2 decades, we sure have seen a lot of new buildings and expansion, renovation, our existing facilities, and also growth. How do you think that this continued expansion of programs and locations have impacted our students, but also our staff? Dr. Sheehan, would you go first?
Oh, going back in time, I came probably at the most difficult and challenging time. Well, I don't know, they do continue, but it was quite a surprise coming from California. California's funding system had really kind of rebounded. And when I arrived at TMCC, there was a major crisis in terms of funding. And 30 employees left really the day I arrived, they were leaving. And we were facing even greater shortcomings in terms of our budget. I had experience in 2 colleges with very severe funding issues, but I think the greatest of the issues was here at TMCC. What was surprising to me was the disparity in funding from the way the system was organized. And so in California, you have a UC system and a state system and a community college system. And here we have just one system with all of the institutions of higher education connected under one body. And that was surprising and shocking in terms of how funding was distributed. So what did we do? It was probably the most difficult of times in terms of combining positions. We at one point had a combined instruction, a vice president of instruction and student services. We had a departure. We combined that into one position and kept combining and combining. And the second week I was here, the executive director of the foundation left, and that was what we absolutely had to depend on over the years. So community colleges historically are underfunded. That's the case in California. My first institution had a $100,000 shortfall walking in the door. College of the Desert, my second institution, had a $111,000 budget shortfall at the end of the year. Very hard to address a funding issue that comes so late in terms of notice. So you have to do more with less, and what I knew was what we had to do was fundraising. Well, fundraising at College of the Desert in Palm Desert is a snap. And in Modesto, it was not that difficult, even though it was a farming type rural community. It wasn't that difficult. When I came here in 2008, I was ready to go. Okay, even though we lost our executive director, what I did was, Kate, I took your position and I said, you have to come over and do fundraising, okay? And then the rest of the department will have to all do more. So we started with fundraising, and all the doors were closed. All the doors were closed. I couldn't even do a major, and you just had a very successful event, fundraising event, and I couldn't even do a fundraising event because you have to have underwriting in order to have a successful event, and I couldn't get the underwriting from anybody in the community. And so what we did was go to the generous foundations that were in town. And if it weren't for the Pennington Foundation, we wouldn't have the kind of facilities we have. And I have to say that in 2008, when I went up to Mount Rose Highway and I saw that very nice building, I thought, oh, that's TMCC. Well, there was something like a Quonset hut in back of it. That was TMCC. I thought, gee, this is awful. This is just terrible. Well, today, if you go up Mount Rose Highway, you see this beautiful edifice, and it's the Pennington Health Science Center. Had it not been for them opening their arms and believing in the college, we would not have that beautiful facility that we have today. So also we had kind of disjointed health services at the time, and now there's a hub so that colleagues can communicate and exchange ideas and be in a beautiful facility supporting them.
That's a great segue. I think Julie has some stories to share about being out there in the
Yeah,
wilderness.
so the Health Science Center certainly was, the Penningtons were instrumental in bringing the initial building there, which initially housed nursing and radiological technology and veterinary nursing. And actually, at first, it was like, are we going to have enough to put in this building? And suddenly, we were out of room. And about, so from 2005 to 2010, we brought on the addition. We brought public safety down there. It really did become sort of this hub of sort of health-related sciences. it, the seams were still busting though, so we had to move veterinary nursing to a beautiful new remodel at Meadows, and they joined CNA there, so we kind of even sort of, we started to grow kind of like cellular growth in a biological sense, right? Taking over different campus sites. I'll keep with that sort of biological vein there. And so now at Health Science Center, we're busting at the seams again, unbelievably, and we're going to be having another expansion. And, so fundraising has been key to that. It's led to so much growth in these programs. It's led to a lot of great interaction among all the groups that are trying to train our CTE students and get into the community to serve the needs. So, yeah, and sort of hearkening back to when we first got there, I just have a little aside. It was a wild, wild west down there. There are all sorts of stories of snakes in the building, rodents in the building, all sorts of critters, and even a very brave director of nursing one day picking up a live snake and getting it out of the building. So there were early times down there where we were being invaded by the wildlife that we were kind of encroaching on at that time.
I do have on the screen here the press release that went out for announcing that building in 2000. Originally, of course, that was meant to be a collaborative place for UNR and for us and for WNC to be together. But they talked a lot about the year 2020 and how they were looking forward and that sort of thing. And now it's been here and it's gone already. So,
Keith, the other surprise for me in terms of buildings was when I got the tour in 2008 and I saw the IGT Applied Technology Center. And that was the saddest looking building I had ever seen. And it's set right across from this beautiful, beautiful facility that the high school students were in. And it was their technical high school site. And then right across was something that looked like it belonged in the 1950s and not such a good spot at all. And I thought, how sad it is that our community college students will have to go to this site and be interested in going from their beautiful edifice over to this really torn, dilapidated kind of facility. So we were, again, lucky to have doors open to us and a major federal grant that supported renovating and totally renovating that facility. And I can remember thinking, this is the most exciting thing a president can do, is like, we have to have, an overhang so when it snows, the students can get, from their cars so that they can, get into the building. And so I was able to be part of that experience of designing that building and knowing that students were again going to have a place where they could feel excited about what was going to happen inside of that building. And then all of the newest technology, robotics, and all of the state-of-the-art needs of our community were then hosted there at this new Pennington Applied Technology Center. So that was very exciting to see that transition.
definitely. Ron, do you have any stories to add? You've seen a lot of change in buildings and expansion too.
I have seen a lot of change, and when I started teaching in part-time in 1994, which was 28 years ago, a lot of the TMCC classes were not taught. They were taught on high school campuses because we just didn't have the facilities. I remember taking a painting class at Worcester High School, and so when I was hired to teach part-time, I taught on the Reno High campus, and these were not Jumpstart classes. These were TMCC classes. We didn't have Jumpstart back then. And what I taught was a printing class, and so this was at the Glen Hare Occupational Center on the Reno High campus. We shared the space, of course, with Reno High's own printing class that they taught there in the afternoons. And this was a long time ago. We had Mac Classic computers, which were 8-bit grayscale, 8-inch screens with, I don't know, the specs were ridiculous. And we shared all of that with Washoe County. I remember that we did not share the toner cartridges because I remember that the teacher, the high school teacher, right before my class would start, as he was leaving, would go to the printer and pull out the toner cartridge, which was a little problematic, but we worked that out. But anyway, so so of course that's evolved. So I taught on that campus for a few years, and then when I started teaching full-time, we moved that printing class up to this campus. We had a print shop in this campus for a while, actual print shop with printing presses, and this would have been in the late 90s, probably mid-90s. And then, so I actually taught in that live print shop, and so I would have to wheel in a blackboard and bring in chairs when I taught the class. And then at the end of the class, I'd have to get all that stuff out of there. And I had to make sure there were live print jobs all over the place, and I had to make sure the students didn't touch any of that. It was interesting and challenging, but we made it work. And then we finally got our own printing equipment in the Sierra building. And then, of course, the copy center, the print shop went away and was replaced by the copy center because everything went digital at that point. And of course, the copy center is now gone as well. The copy center was originally our dark room. And that evolved into the copy center, and then that has just evolved into a classroom here in the Sierra building. So it's been, it's been quite a ride actually in terms of the facilities and what we have available to us. And now the program I teach in is spread across we're all on this campus, but we're spread across all three of the main buildings, and we have great facilities and great digital printing equipment, and considerably different from how it was all those years ago.
Well, that seems like a natural segue to a question that was a little further down in my program, but let's talk about the change in technology, because you've mentioned it a little bit. I do want to take an opportunity to kick us off with this question with a little video. Now, this video's been around for a minute, so the sound is not great, but let me share that with you very quickly, and then we'll talk about technology. Talking about time passing quickly, that it looks like that video is 9 years old already, and our website's been through a couple of changes even since then. But the website's definitely not the only technology that has changed around here. So I want to just throw it out there. How have advances in technology changed both teaching and the way that we offer services? And how has modern technology benefited our students compared to 10 or 20 years ago? Elena, would you like to get us started?
Sure. Thanks, Kate. We watched this, and it's kind of funny, right? And as I'm sitting here thinking that the watch that I'm wearing, the phone that I have, none of that was in existence just a few, years ago, right? So I think the transformation in technology that we have seen here at this institution in the last 20 years, as is the case for the rest of the society, has just been mind-boggling. And I think it certainly changed the way we do business as higher education institution. I mean, if you think back to 2000, back to the time that is featured in this little video about our website. Back then, we still were dealing with, scanning penciled bubble sheets, right, for surveys. I mean, that was a thing for surveys, for attendance, for grades. So think about the catalog and the class schedule. So those of you who have been around know what a traumatic time of the year it was in marketing when we had to put together a bunch of WordPerfect files, which was the catalog at the time, and it all had to be done just so, and printing it and then distributing the printed versions of the class schedule and the college catalogs that were just like a retail shopping catalogs, right? So in stacks of them you would see around campus and sometimes in the community. So, you know, the old email clients, Gmail, right? So who remembers that? Back then, we really didn't have, you know, the student information system was an old legacy-based system with the grainy black background, yellow letters. So it was not until 2011 that we transitioned to PeopleSoft, which is, it's kind of hard to believe that it's been over 10 years already, but back in 2011 is when we migrated from the old legacy-based database based system, student information system, SIS, to PeopleSoft. We can talk all we want about PeopleSoft, and we all have feelings about it right now, but nonetheless, it was a pretty revolutionary step forward in terms of a common, pretty complex and comprehensive platform. Well, back in 2000, I mean, the application for admission was still a paper and pencil thing with long lines on the third level by admissions and records of students standing there and turning the application for admission in. And what do we have now? It's at the click of a button. Students can apply from anywhere in the world, and it's a very quick, very easy, and user-friendly experience for all of our folks. So Bill Garand, we chatted about this panel, and he reminded me that back in the day, at the turn of the century, we were using the VEL as our network operating system, right? So we, you know, to get to a single user sign-on was quite an evolution, which really is quite important and sort of streamlined a lot of the usage of our technical infrastructure on campus. If you think about the last 20 years, we definitely, with recession, we have seen quite a roller coaster as far as enrollment at the institution. In 2010, for instance, we saw one of the highest enrollments on record. So I think our headcount was about over 13,000 students, and our FTE was just shy of 8,000 full-time equivalent students. Just as a point of comparison, today we're a little bit on the downside from that, and so our headcount is 8,000. So it's pretty much the same as what the FTE was back in 2010. So of course, as we saw such an influx of students, the issue of access became paramount, and that is where we begin to see some pretty significant changes in the role of technology in higher education, and especially at a community college, improving access and making sure that as many students can access courses. And that's where we begin to see proliferation of online education, right? So does anybody remember the name of the online learning management system, one of the earlier ones? Moodle. Moodle was the thing, right? And then we had Moodle, yes. And then we had Angel. And then in 2012, I believe, is when Canvas went live. And so, and we never looked back, right? So once we went from cablecast classes, from TV classes to online classes, it revolutionized pretty much how we deliver instruction. And I think we all know, right? So it used to be that you close the college for weather, and that's it. It's a snow day. Well, fast forward to today, and thanks to a pretty, interesting experience that we all have gone through during the pandemic. I think we definitely, as much as it was a traumatic experience, it was also just going forward in leaps and bounds as far as the use of technology. And so today, there's no such thing as closing the college, right? So we not only deliver instruction online, but we deliver advising online, we deliver testing online, we deliver all sorts of services online. And the catalog is no longer a printed retail catalog, right? Like a Sears catalog, everything is online. So we do live a big chunk of our professional lives and outside of these walls in this digital universe that we've all created for ourselves and our students. And it is a wild ride, and I think next stop is virtual reality.
Well, and there's been a lot of changes in the classroom too. Julie, I know you have some stories about new technology, and Ron, perhaps you have some more thoughts too.
Elena mentioned it. So distance technology, the meaning of distance technology has really changed, because when I first came here, I was asked if I wanted to do a distance technology class, which, you came down the hall here and you were in the classroom and you were on a cable channel, a late night TV, and I would have people come up and it wasn't just available to students. Like, I'd have random strangers in the community come up saying, I saw you on channel such and so last night and you were teaching biology and I have a question. It was the craziest thing that those would be blasted out there. And so that was the beginning of distant technology, and that doesn't seem very long ago. And even when individual faculty wouldn't have a website, I mean, that would have just been unheard of in the beginning. And now just having it there, whether it's an assist or whether it's, hybrid, and just the freedom that gives for being able to share information with students, and they never have to have lost that syllabus, right? And you never have to go and print them another copy, and, all those kinds of things, just, expanding the access, getting some of those nuts and bolts covered so you could focus on other things. And just, now to think of the Zoom environment and the chat and the share and the, it's kind of overwhelming. It's definitely a learning curve, but it is, definitely greatly accelerated because of the pandemic. But I think it has lots of options and opportunities for higher ed. What do you remember, Ron?
Well, in my area, what I remember most is not the evolution of technology that we were using to teach. It was the evolution of technology that we taught in the classroom. In other words, in graphic design, graphic arts, graphic communications, as I was mentioning, it was, 25, 30 years ago, it was all about print production, right? The schedules were printed, the catalogs were printed, the syllabus was printed, everything, the main means of communicating was ink on paper. And so that's what we taught to our students. Those were the skill sets they needed to know. And of course, that has evolved dramatically in the world of graphic design to where we are at today, where, of course, printing still exists. It's not going to go away. As a friend of mine says, the internet will never be able to label a ketchup bottle. So printing's not going anywhere, but obviously our means of communicating has evolved dramatically. And so it's not how I taught, but what I had to teach that evolved over the last 20 years, which has been quite a ride, actually, and quite challenging and interesting to stay on top of.
Well, so that kind of leads us to where things have really changed over time. And so, Dr. Sheehan, I thought maybe you could spend a few minutes telling us what it was like in 2008, 2009, when the economic downturn sent a lot of students back to school. They lost their jobs and things were changing. It was a really difficult time for a lot of people, but here at TMCC, there were a lot of positive things going on. Can you share a couple of those with us?
I think the downturn did increase our enrollment, and we absolutely had people that were retraining, and so they found the community college, and we were there to help. The amazing thing is the spirit of the faculty and the staff to do more with less. And that's what we had to do. So we were collapsing positions. So in one office you would have one person doing 2 jobs or 3 jobs. The administration collapsed to its bare minimum, just what we needed for accreditation standards. And we were able to keep the services going for students. So the students were our priority. We put them front and center at every discussion. We were a collegial group, and we shared what we thought at all levels, what could be condensed or saved, and we went after that so that we could put services first for students that needed them. So we were never depleted in terms of the online effort, the frontline effort. that we provided for students so that they could feel, even in the day where we didn't have as much technology as there is today, that they would be supported in every way. And so we did see an increase, and we did find out we could do more with less. There comes a time when it's very difficult, but that's when you see the spirit of the institution, and I think that's absolutely what was demonstrated here at TMCC.
Well, and part of that, I understand, over the last 20 years is that we have really changed and expanded our programs and services, but particularly degrees and certificates that we're offering to meet the community's needs and make sure that we are training students both for transfer, but also to go out and get those new careers out in the community. So with arranging new transfer agreements and also with the addition of all those academic programs, I wondered if perhaps Ron and Julie, maybe you have some insight about which programs created in the last 20 years have made the biggest impact in our community.
That's a tough question. The biggest impact.
It's tough.
Yeah, we've had a lot of growth on, all of the whole range, from very entry level to stackable to our bachelor's degrees, which were all new, in this time period. And so I would say, they all have their impact at each of those levels, and it really, kind of positions us for the place where you can come, get your start, get a job, continue in your field, go take that next certificate and stack on. I really think that's been our strength, and that is where we can have easy on-ramps and off-ramps for students, because we know life gets in the way, students have to make a living. And so I would really say we've done a lot to design programs in that way, all the way toward bachelor's level transfer, very well-paying jobs, from associate's degrees. And so we should be really proud of that, I think. Ron, what do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think the bachelor's degrees stand out in my mind as something that's a fairly new thing for us, and a really fantastic avenue for our students. And then the stackability, just as Julie said. I can speak with authority about the area that I teach in, and I think it's actually a great example of what we're talking about here, which is the graphic arts program. It was a 2-year terminal AAS degree for 20 plus years, until 6 years ago when we started talking about how we can get a 4-year option for students. And it's something we've been talking about for the whole time I've worked here, really. Reaching out to UNR, reaching out to NSC, reaching out to GBC, and we had established relationships with these other institutions. Like GBC, for example, has a BAS, Bachelor of Applied Science degree, which we articulated with about more than 10 years ago now. But back in 2018, we made a really dramatic change where we brought in an AA version, a transferable version of the degree. We still have the certificate, and then we created this sort of unique 3rd year advanced certificate, which ties into the 4th year of what we have with NSC right now, which is this 3+1 program. It's 3 years at TMCC, and then the +1 is NSC owning the last year of a BA degree, a bachelor's degree, and it's all taught on our campus at TMCC. It's turned out to be really successful. It's such a great option for students, because now they can start off, they can get the Certificate of Achievement in their 1st year, they can get the AAS if they want to be done and go get a job, or they can get the AA for their 2nd year. Then they can get the Advanced Certificate, which is a standalone certificate, so people can even come back that got our degree years ago and get that certificate, or you can, if they're working in the industry, they don't want a degree, they just want to update their skills, they can get the Advanced Certificate. And then they can take that 4th year, again taught on our campus, and get their bachelor's degree. This also transfers to UNR. Our AA transfers directly to UNR because they have a graphic arts program right now. So we have all these options for students, and they have all these sort of benchmarks they can hit on their journey. And what we're finding is that's what they're doing. They're like, well, I'm going to just work on the AA right now. And then it's like, well, actually, I'm interested in going a little further, so I'll get the 3rd year. Or that some of them go to UNR, which is fine. We have a great relationship with them. But most of our students stay here, and we've had great success, better than we actually expected, with students wanting the bachelor's degree. Everybody wants a bachelor's degree, which is hard to say no to that. So it's been a fantastic success, I think, and I'm really happy to see more of that happening across TMCC and other areas with these bachelor degree programs coming out now.
And I think that's led by what the community needs. Okay?
Absolutely,
So-
yes, and thank you for saying that, because that was a big part of the evolution of our program, was all done through our advisory committees and students as well. We took into account the students were always telling us they wanted a 4-year degree option. They didn't want to go out of state or go to Southern Nevada, but the industry wanted those degrees, absolutely.
And we're lucky we have had that great tie to community. The college has always had a seat on the EDON board, so we know what the workforce needs are. The first baccalaureate degrees came as a result of community connections where jobs were waiting and the training was needed. And I think that's one of the nimbleness of a community college is one of its greatest assets, is that it can respond quickly. And we're very responsive, and the degrees are not esoteric degrees where you don't know what you're going to do after you get that baccalaureate degree. When you get one here, you've got a job. You know where you're going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Practical degrees.
Yeah, absolutely. I love one of our most recent taglines that we have used, which is TMCC is community. I think we have all gone to the doctor, to the auto shop, any place you go in the community, you're highly likely to run into a TMCC graduate. And you know, I think many of us over the years have recruited students standing in lines at the store, waiting at the doctor's office, waiting for your car to be serviced, because you do see a presence of TMCC graduates just about in every part of the community, which is, I think, what makes our work so valuable and makes this college a true and genuine part of the Reno-Sparks community.
So another very special thing that happened during your tenure, Dr. Sheehan, was the start of our Success First Summer Bridge program as we know it today. It did have some seedlings before you got here, I understand, but I wondered if we could take a minute to talk about how did that program take shape, and how did the students in the early years of the program benefit from what was then the Success First Summer Bridge? And also, do you feel like maybe Julie, has this program met its original goals?
So I know Julie will have something to say because she came before the bridge. So
Right,
Julie,
so there
why don't
was
you go first?
there was a grant-funded summer bridge which was focused on just STEM pathway students, because that was the initiative of the grant. But it was the same concept. We were learning that students needed this sort of preparation, running start to college, being comfortable with the environment and the resources, and a really sort of get ready to start on the right foot experience prior to stepping foot on campus as a student for their freshman year. And so the concept was the same. At first it was just focused on science students, but then definitely there was an appetite to expand it and make it available to all students and all majors more broadly. And so that's when we all partnered, and this was one of those kind of great synergies where grant money, community donations, other foundation fundraising could all come together. And instead of serving just 20 students, which is what we could do, we leveraged all those resources, and it's now, I think at its peak it was like 258 one summer, because that's how many seats there were in Sierra 108. Like, we literally wanted to max out Sierra one year when we had all the funding to be able to have that many students participate. But the mission has been the same, the running start and get ready for success in college. And yeah, and then it really launched and became, widely available and great impact.
Well, I was so happy to see that there was something in existence that had come before my time in 2008. But what I had gleaned from this national effort in achieving the dream is that across the country there's an epidemic of underpreparation as students enter the community college. And so there's a gap between where they are and where they need to be in terms of being college ready. And the usual difficulties come between the passage of English and math. Okay, those are the two barriers. And in achieving a dream, a researcher works with a retired college president and goes into an institution and analyzes the level of preparation of those students. And that's where you and I work together so closely, Elena, as we looked at what is the achievement level of these incoming students. And in 2008, I don't know if you remember this, but there was something called the high school proficiency exam.
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
and students were passing it at the 10th grade. Okay, so where was the mastery of 11th and 12th? So that was a dilemma with students thinking they were ready, with counselors thinking that these students were ready, them entering and then finding out the barrier existed. So we had to catch them, and then we had to quantify what that progression was and what their success rate was. On a national scale, it was very good, and we found the same thing here. Now, funding it was, that was the challenge. Okay, so you had a grant that was very specific. Then we went out begging, and we truly did. And we showed some results, and we got more donors. And of course, the Pennington Foundation was, and actually, we had two sources of Pennington funding coming in to the institution to help us, individuals and the foundation itself. So with all of this together, we were able to say, with this much money, we're able to create this much success for these students. And then I think that has projected it along the way. And I had no idea that it was up to the number it is now, so that's fabulous.
Yeah.
And I think right around 2010, we ran a major gift campaign that, student scholarships was also part
That's
of it.
right.
Right.
That's right.
And it's been long enough now that we have graduates out of that pipeline who are now, surgeons in the community, doctors and nurses in the community, so that initial, and it just, the legacy ongoing.
So another thing I know was really big during your time, Dr. Sheehan, was a commitment to going green. This was the kind of the time when TMCC started talking about sustainability, not only as a business, but also as a degree or certificate option for students, because there were now going to be jobs available in these fields. And so this is something that continues here, by the way. As you know, TMCC has done a lot of sustainability now. We have the sustainability advocate, and there's all sorts of initiatives going on here on campus. Can you tell us a little bit about how that all began? And I've got a couple of pictures here to share too, the wind turbines out there at the Dandini campus, and also these are just some solar panels. These ones are here on the Sierra building, but of course the Vista building ones came first. What was it like to get that started?
Okay, so it started just a little bit before my time. We had this incredible vice president of finance, and Dolores Sanford. And Dolores was helping us pinch every penny. And then we had a great operations department. And together, they were, Dolores leading it, wanted us to become a sustainable enterprise, a sustainable facility. In order to do that, we would have to pass a certain number of tests in order to be a lead institution. I had to look it up. Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design is a lead institution. And so that was the goal, was pushing forward to become a lead institution, which would save us money, which we desperately needed in 2008. And so that was the impetus to starting with the solar panels and the wind turbines, and then that generated interest in where could that go in terms of programming for students. And so that was the beginning, the belief that creating a better environment for our Earth as a whole, we could be a leader in that area. And having fabulous administrators, I was so fortunate, because when you have great administrators, you just leave them alone and let them go and do their job, and they do great. And that was my experience here. And so that program just really took off. We were recognized as a lead institution, and we saved money in the process.
And now we do a lot of work with second nature and all sorts of things. So sustainability is a big focus for us. So thank you for telling us how that all started. We're going to be wrapping up here shortly, so I have one question I thought maybe we could all answer, although that's not really what I told you we were doing. But could you please talk to me about how commencement has changed over the years? And I'll bring up a picture on our timeline here of the last time commencement was here on our Dandini campus when we outgrew it because there were 963 degrees and certificates awarded that year in 2010, and it was just far too many people to have in one place. But you all have served in significant capacities at commencement ceremonies over the years. Could you share one of your favorite commencement stories?
Well, my favorite was always how, when we had the large groups in person and we would make the tunnel. After the ceremony, the faculty would kind of put their hands together or be kind of in rows and make this tunnel where the graduates would be going through. And you got to see every single one of them. And they'd run over to you and give you a hug if they had been in your class or if they were in your department. And, that just, there's just early great memories of that. Yeah, how about you, Ron?
I have a lot of great memories. When we used to do it on campus out in the parking lot, what I remember is that afterward, like the next week, everybody would have a tan line like this on their forehead. But when we started doing them indoors, I was the faculty senate chair-elect and chair from 2011 to 2015. And so back then, it was a tradition for the chair and the chair-elect to read the names of the graduates as they came up on stage. And so I took advantage of it. I did it for 4 years. In the last couple of years, as I would go find all of the students that were in the program I taught in the graphic arts program first, and I would tell them to look at which side of the stage that I was going to be on because they had students coming up both sides. And I would tell them to go to my side. And so they did that. And so I have a couple of really great 2014 and 2015, both of those years, where all of the students that were in my classes that I had that I knew them all very well because they all had to take at least 2 or 3 classes from me to make it through the program. And it was just such a proud moment for me to have all these students coming up and reading their names and shaking their hands and giving them hugs and stuff as they were coming up on the stage. And so that's a really, really positive, fun memory for me.
I think having commencement on campus had been a wonderful event that everyone would be looking forward to. This is one day a year when you truly see what it's all about. And I think everybody would come out, as you could see it in that picture, a lot of the folks that are not faculty, the support services, the back-end operation folks, they would all come out and watch these hundreds of students that descend upon campus with their families, and the concentration of positive energy, of happiness in one place, in this one spot in the middle of the campus on the quad in front of the student center, what is the student center now, has just always been so energizing and so amazing. Now, one thing though is that the middle of May in this neck of the woods can be pretty tricky. You could have a 90-degree heat with 10 lines, or you could have a snowstorm on your hands, right? And so I think every year, and that was another factor I think that we ultimately started looking for different venues, is that the weather is just way too unpredictable. I remember one year it started out as just a perfectly sunny and warm day, and then pretty much in the middle of the ceremony, out of nowhere comes this extremely strong gust of wind, and all of the graduation caps just kind of fly up in the air, and it's not a toss at the end of the ceremony. It's just everything goes up and everyone rushes trying to catch it, and all of us are holding down the stage and things like that. So that was a nice, wonderful comic relief. But it is not. But we sort of have come in full circle in a way, right? So during the pandemic, we did hold a drive-through commencement ceremony right here on Dandini campus, and I'm actually happy to see it. So now we've grown to a point where we cannot fit it into one day if we want to do it on the main campus. So we now have it split throughout several days, and this is what we've done during the pandemic. And I personally am extremely happy that commencement is back at home because, like I said, it turns this campus into just this concentration of happiness for a day. And it is extremely energizing, I think, for every individual who is affiliated with TMCC.
Well, I think my favorite probably was my last, and it was my 18th or 19th commencement that I presided over. And through the years, looking at the other institutions, we had limited space, especially College of the Desert. You had to get tickets in order to get in to the ceremony, which then prohibited, a family being able to participate. And I thought that was such a sad situation. The last commencement in 2015 was my favorite because it was in an environment where everyone could be present. There were over 3,000 at that commencement, and all family members, all friends could be part of that celebration. And I thought, this is the way that it should be, because it's a joyous moment of accomplishment that students want to share with their family and friends.
Those are some good memories. Thank you all so much for your stories and your time today. Thank you everyone for joining us for our final professional development 50th anniversary. This has been an amazing year of celebration, and we couldn't do it without storytellers like our panelists today. Thank you. All right, have a great day.